weak signal. The International Standard Organization culture does not try to eliminate imperfection, as you know. It tries to make risks visible, traceable, and controllable. This is the mindset we bring to AI bias. So what ISO 24 or 29 really is and is not a fairness algorithm. And this clarification is essential. It does not tell you which metric to use. It does not replace data science's expertise. What it provides is something else, a shared governance framework. A framework that allows organizations to ask the right questions, document their choices, and take responsibility for outcomes. The standard itself, the slide 5. This slide reminds us that we are dealing with a formal ISO standard. That matters, but because ISO standard create a common language between engineer, managers, auditors, regulators, and executives. It is not about innovation speed. I will talk about innovation later on. It is about institutional trust, systemic trust. This standard exists because AI has crossed that threshold, has crossed boundaries. In slide 6, the assessment of bias in AI system. Notice the word assessment. The standard does not promise perfection. It promises evaluation, transparency, and control. Assessment means we acknowledge bias may exist and exist. We try to understand where it comes from, and we evaluate its potential impact. This is a very mature, very ISO-like approach. Slide 7. The title says Assessment of Bias in AI System. On slide 7. This means not elimination, not correction at all costs. Because eliminating all bias is unrealistic due ontologically to the manner the neural networks in the deep learning of AI works. What matters is knowing which biases exist, where, and with what consequences. Governance starts with this visibility, consciousness of where is the bias, and it does exist. The aim of this standard is pragmatic per se. ISO 24 or 29 helps organizations identify potential biases, assess their relevance, document trade-off, and manage risks. I will certainly develop the definition of risk, the probability of the likelihood by the consequences of this probability or likelihood. In short, to turn bias from an invisible danger, and danger is not only risk, danger and risk are two different words and two different realities. Turn bias from an invisible danger into a managed variable. And this managed variable could lead to weak signals, to innovation later on. We'll see that. So the scope of this ISO 2429 applies broadly. It covers machine learning, statistical models, hybrid systems. It applies across sectors, particularly highly reliable organization. I'm part of them as pharmaceutical engineer and information system doctor in this field. The highly reliable organization involve lying in the process. So the trust should be 100%. And we have the problem now with this kind of application. Importantly, and this is very important, it does not impose mathematical fairness metrics. It's not a recipe for mathematics solution. Why? Because governance must remain technology agnostic, must remain technology agnostic. Now the time definition of these bias, like ISO said, slide 10. ISO defines bias as a systematic deviation that may lead to unjustified or harmful effects, consequences in the real life, depending on the context of use, human, machine, environment. The tripod, very important. This is fundamental. Bias is not defined by intention, and sometimes could be criminal intention. It is defined by impact, the consequences that immediately places bias in the domain of risk management, that is, say, related to the ISO 31000 norm on the systemic risk management and the 27001 on the cybersecurity management. We will see that later on. Now, let's talk about key sources of bias. This slide 11 is a turning point. ISO identifies 5 sources of bias, like you can see in the Ishikawa diagram, for those who know the Japanese system. ISO identifies 5 sources of bias: data, design, model, usage, and organization. Data, design, model, usage, and organization. That last one, organization, often surprise people. But in practice, many biases are produced by the organizational pressure, time pressure, technical pressure, economic pressure, incentive, and governance gaps, not by algorithm alone. This is the strategic alignment as troubleshooting in that case. So you have the detail here. And this life cycle approach, the ISO logic, that certainly remind you the Deming wheel for improvement. Is the ISO thinking is life cycle thinking. Bias does not appear once and disappear. It evolves like in ecological way with data, usage, context, and objectives. This is why bias must be monitored across the entire life cycle of the solution, the product, so on, from design to improvement. Bias is a dynamic risk, not a one-off event. And this could be amplified by the environment and the pressure on the collaborators. Now, we go to governance and audit. This is where the ISO professionals feel at home. Traceability, documentation, clear responsibilities. Bias management must leave evidence, because what cannot be audited cannot be trusted. Something that is not written does not exist. And here we have a problem, because you know that there is a black box in AI, deep learning, and the neuronal networks of the AI, there is a black box. Something is not traceable. And this is the real problem. How AI works, we don't know in reality, because we cannot trace atomically the decision in AI. And this is a big deal. And that's why the human responsibility remain at the top. In slide 14, we can see the related ISO standards. The 24029 fits into a broader ecosystem. It connects naturally with quality management, ISO 9001, risk management, ISO 31000, information security, and ISO governance standard, which is the 38507, which is the standard for the governance. Bias management becomes part of the management system of the organization, not an isolated ethical checklist. It's part of the organization systematically. And the key message, slide 15, and let me emphasize this standard does not moralize AI. It professionalizes AI use in a socio-materiality way of thinking. It transforms bias into a governable object, and at the end of the day could be innovative objects because it reveals some weak signals in the organization. But for this, we need time to work on that. This is part of the Slack concept we could discuss during the Q&A. So it is a fundamental and foundational standard for trust in AI, certification, auditing, and decision-making governance. Next steps. From here, ISO 24029 can be used in many ways in governance framework, in audits, in certifications, in professional training, and we're standing here for that. That is exactly the purpose of today's discussion and the GSDC goals. Slide 17, an executive summary. If executives remember one thing, it should be this: bias governance is decision governance. You are not governing algorithm, you are governing how decisions are made. You are not governing algorithm, you are governing how decisions are made. And from ethical concern to governable risk, ethics alone does not scale. Governance does. ISO 24029 represents that shift from values to processes, from intentions to accountability on slide 18. Slide 19, the logical governance framework. This diagram summarizes the logic of the standard. And this should remind you the Ishikawa diagram with the cause, probable cause of an accident, human, environment, tools, etc. And the time pressure and socio-technical and socio-economic pressure is also causes of this problem. So the context first, the sources of bias next, assessment, controls, and life cycle management. Bias is treated as a contextual risk, not an abstract flow. We know with Nancy Leveson and the STAMP, Systematic Theoretical Accident Management, we know that the main source of systemic accident are pressure, temporal pressure, economic pressure, socio-technical pressure. Though this socio-technical is very important in that way. So this scope revisited, again, this applies to AI system and AI-aided decisions. That distinction matters. Most systems do not decide alone. They influence human and influence the deliverable, and human influence the pressure put it on the system and on the alignment, the strategic alignment of information system, like Anderson and Vakatraman said in 1993. What is bias? Another time. Just take a bit of water. What is bias? It's a reminder. Bias is not always visible, and it is rarely intentional. That is why governance cannot rely on good faith alone. It's a systematic deviation on AI behavior, could be hallucination, or outcomes that may lead to unjustified or harmful impacts. Impacts taken in the mindset of risk management. Depending on the context of use, let's say the pressure context or the temporal pressure. The main sources of bias, to summarize and notice how organization stands alongside data and models. This is often where real problems emerge on the data representativeness, historical data bias in interpretation, design, data management, troubleshooting. Model should come from the academic world for sure, and theoretical one. The use, misinterpretation, over-reliance in AI. We can see that every day by using our AI on the smartphone. And the most important, organization, governance and incentives and pressure lead to the main sources of bias and amplify existing bias. So that the pressure could amplify an hallucination in AI. So life cycle-based approach. Without life cycle thinking, bias governance is superficial. With it, bias becomes manageable. It exists, but it's manageable. And as you saw before in a Deming wheel spirit, bias is managed across the AI life cycle, from design to continuous improvement, passing through development, technological development, deployment, use, monitoring, and certainly in a RAG AI way, and continuous improvement. The nurturing on the AI in an organization is also a critical thing in order to reduce the risk, particularly in a highly reliable organization. Highly reliable organization are aeronautical, spatial, pharmaceutical, finance, railway company that involves, life being in the system. Governance and audit value, this is where ethics becomes operational. This is in that slide where ethics becomes operational, not good intention. Documented decisions, not writing, does not exist. Traceable responsibility, audit-ready system. By design, documentation, audit trail, permanent audit trail, decision traceability, human accountability, human responsibility, documented trade-offs, audit-ready evidence, treatment of weak signals, treatment of minor incidents. In a highly reliable organization, every incident is treated by itself and could lead to 100,000 likelihood events. So this is a job by itself. And as March said in the Slack theory, this could spend 20% of the time of collaborator in highly reliable organization. So we are talking about ISO ecosystem alignment, and that's why this norm is related to other one, the strategic alignment of information system with the 27001, part of the ISO 31 on the risk management, and for sure for the client, the delivery of goods with quality, the ISO 9001, and the governance 38507. ISO 24 or 29 strengthen the entire ISO ecosystem in AI context. It bridges AI with existing governance structures and turns bias into a controllable, governable, and auditable AI risk. Key message again, bias becomes controllable because it becomes governable. And in that way, could becomes assets of the company. So slide 27 directly, because the context change everything. The same system can be acceptable in one context and unacceptable in another. When you're passing through normal situation to abnormal, to crisis or extreme environment of management, then there is a disalignment of the information system. And in that case, the same system can be acceptable, but not in crisis, for instance. This is classic risk logic. This makes bias a risk management object and not a moral abstraction. And bias must be assessed relative to purpose, impact, and stakeholder. Bias in that perspective is socio-technical. On slide 28. If you only fix algorithm, you miss the real problem. Bias lies at the intersection of technology, humans, and organizations. It's a Darwin ecological system, socio-material new being. Human plus AI equal new entity to manage. We call that socio-materiality, like guidance and Orligovsky said. So now we are on the core of this presentation, these keynotes in the AI-aided decision making, which is the hidden risk. Most AI systems assist humans, but assistance often turns into authority. There is a human in the loop, so we are safe. This is not true. In reality, humans tend to overtrust AI outputs without verification. And responsibility that way becomes diffuse and asleep. Bias becomes institutionalized. We can see that in aeronautical accidents when the pilot trusts too much the autopilot and go to asleep. And when it arrives in a big platform, the workload is so high that it cannot manage. So another way, this norm we are talking about explicitly addresses this human AI coupling, social material, it's a new entity to manage. This is very important. So the human AI coupling, lifestyle bias management, should be the masterpiece of this presentation. Humans tend to overtrust machines, and that is where responsibility dissolves and bias stabilizes. So if we are not this responsibility, we stabilize AI bias, and then we can amplify this bias until the accident. So another time, the dimming logic of ISO design, development, deployment, operation, improvement, and redesign. That's why the accurate studying of bias in the improvement phase could lead to innovation in new design, redesign, refining, nurturing RAG AI, for example. And governance, documentation, and adaptability is the key, the master key, because responsibility is not subcontracted to AI in reality. There's always a human responsible at the end of the day or at the end of the catastrophe. So ISO 24 or 29 another time turns bias into evidence. Evidence, weak signals, evidence, clue, and redesign or accident. This is the real power. Document bias, traceability, explicit human, and then enables internal and external audit, certification, regulatory readiness, integration into other global quality assurance management, and bias becomes auditable evidence and not idle behavior in the gray zone. Why this matter for certification by GSDC or training by GSDC? Because this is not only a technical standard, it creates new professional skills, new professional capabilities, and it allows organizations to reduce the AI-related nonconformities, strengthens trust for the client and stakeholder, shareholder, professionalize and personalize AI governance with a RAG AI and a good nurturing. And for GSDC professionals, bias management becomes a certifiable competence, a new skills in this new world. AI governance becomes a career skill set. Ethics become operational practice, not just only a few words. Or ethics is by design in that case, thanks to this ISO-based certification. Some takeaways for you guys. Bias is unavoidable. First, unmanaged bias is not. This comes from governance. So bias is unavoidable. This ISO norm transforms bias into a governable risk and innovation capabilities. Trust in AI depends on process, accountability, and good documentation. And certified professional will be central to AI adoption, in particularly in highly reliable organization. We do not govern AI to control machines. We govern AI to protect the legitimacy of human decisions, augmented decision, and not subcontracted decision. For this closing, I would say that AI should protect human decision and not being subcontractor. Thank you so much for your attention. I'm ready to answer your question right now. Thank you, Gori, for your confidence and your help on this presentation.
Absolutely pleasure, Yannick, and thank you so much for giving us insightful session. And yes, the question and answer session is now officially opened. So let's wait on people's responses and their questions in the chat box. And I'll also look around the live stream if we are getting any questions.
If I can propose something, Gori, a
Yeah.
question that could be in the scope of GSDC. What skills will future AI auditors need? Start on this. And beyond technical knowledge, I would say governance understanding, new governance understanding. Secondly, risk assessment qualification based on the ISO 31. Thirdly, documentation analysis, work on intelligence. And fourthly, ethical reasoning. What is ethical in this scope? could be the skills and capabilities for GSDC members.
We have one question coming from Armand. Do you have any recommendation as a plan for starting a governance part?
Good question. I think the first piece could be the a collection of bias and weak signals on the AI troubleshooting, and being able to internal debates on the metrics, and try to make an auto audit of the situation and involve all the people in the organization, like in the regulation, European regulation on data privacy. There's a personal responsibility to detect and declare um, the troubleshooting on the computer, for example, or the data gap to the DPO. It would be the same to make a person responsible for that, the collection, the raw collection of all incidents or observation due to AI hallucination and AI problem. And then come to GSDC for certification.
That's
Only
amazing.
at least one person responsible in the room, in the company.
Course. I hope that answered your question, Armand. And yes, we also have questions here in the live. So Rohan asks, have you personally encountered a situation where an AI system's recommendation felt biased or unfair? How was it identified and handled?
Yeah, I faced that in artificial pancreas study, where we have insulin pump implanted it in a patient, and with a sensor, a blood sensor, analyzing the glycemia each minute. And this lead to a decision, automatic decision, to make a bolus or modify the basal rates in the insulin pump, taking into account that the insulin in the body of the patient is very concentrated and could kill the patient within 1 minute if bad administered. And we saw that the AI and algorithmic decision was not so good um, among the lunch, breakfast, and dinner, because AI has not a nose to smell food and to anticipate a bolus before lunchtime. And this lead to a big deal. And another study, that's why I'm talking about innovation, because this lead to a clinical study. I was in charge personally, I sponsor, to study the algorithmic phase of the closed loop on this pump. And this was a very big problem, because we should anticipate time for lunch, for example. So in that example involving life being, we saw that algorithmic decision was bad or inadapted to the real world evidence in medicine.
Thank you so much for that answer. I'm sure like Rohan must have got, a glimpses of how you handled it. The question platform is still open, so if you have any questions, you can feel free to drop them in the chat box. And as they keep coming up, I'm going to read a few of the more questions related to it from the live stream. How does the standard support accountability when biased outcomes are identified? That's one of the other questions.
And another time?
How does the standard support accountability when biased outcomes are identified?
Mm-hmm. First, I would like to repeat that this norm avoid prescribing mathematical metrics. First things, it focuses on contextual evaluation, documentation, and governance, and allow organization to choose appropriate technical tools. There is no prescription per se for this kind of accountability. So this is the only response I can say. Perhaps related to this one, the fact that the question that could be also heard could be, is this certification mandatory? And the answer would be no, not, because it's just currently a guidance standard and a framework. So no no obligation. When talking, I just would like to clarify the question. Is the question a CFO one on accountability, or we are talking about accountability of bias?
Okay, I could ask that. But I guess it's across the live stream, so let's see if we get answer to that. And meanwhile, we can move with another question. From your past projects, what challenges did you face when trying to detect bias in AI models?
Okay. To try to answer the previous question, um,
The previous
on the,
question you want me to read?
uh, because no, okay, I will answer this one. Another time the question, to be sure, but we are talking. I would like to talk about RAG AI. Could you repeat the last one?
Okay, from your past projects, what challenges did you face when trying to detect bias in AI models?
Okay. This was last year with Quantic Enterprise. We started to implement a RAG AI. A RAG AI is a sovereign AI. So when you are using ChatGPT, for example, it's LLM, but you are using all available internet data. So it's very huge among our data. But in my job is forbidden to use this kind of LLM. We should work with the so-called RAG AI. It's sovereign AI. So the database should be sure, should be property. So we are reducing the capability of the intelligence of the artificial intelligence to go and take over data that are not certified. So reduce strongly the databases of this AI. And we encounter more hallucinations than we could have with all the data of the world. So this is a big deal because the algorithm in AI are called Bayesian methods. So this is kind of weight of evidence. So the weight of evidence increases with the amount of data. When you are reducing the amount of data, the hallucination augments exponentially. And we did not succeed in stabilize the AI bias with this first prototype. So secondly, we try to seal the first answer as it was perfectly, but applied with our data, and then authorize secondly to go and search other data, but as strong as those that we have. And this is very difficult to obtain, to stabilize, to align the AI between seal data and real world data. And we have this, I hand with that. In the clinical research, we are here because we know that hospital data are strong, but it is few related to all the data of a patient in the real life. So we are also aiming to use the real life data, but they are not so accurate. And the real problem, to reduce the bias, is the good mixing between hospital data and real world data. And the problem is here in the mixing and the related weight of evidence expressed in decibels. Decibels is the unit of this measure invented by Alan Turing, inventor of the AI.
Wow, thank you so much for that answer. I hope it answered Noel's question. That was from Noel. I still haven't got reply to the previous question, but yeah, I guess meanwhile we can just wait if like the audience is responding. And yeah, here's one more question. What lessons learned from your experience would you apply differently after reading ISO/IEC 24029/1?
Okay. And Gori, I think we could propose to our auditors to eventually send more documentation on what I will say now, because it's very theoretical, philosophical, and academical, and it's a real answer. The key words, which is not in the norm, is socio-materiality and affordance. These two words, can search about it, socio-materiality and affordance. And with two main authors, Guidance, Giddens, and Orligorsky. This is it's very difficult. It's a concept very hard, even in an academic field. But it says that we are creating a kind of Leviathan. Human plus AI equal another entity, another body, another mind, and could be a Leviathan. Could be a genius, could be a Leviathan. And this is the way I think we could go on with our auditor one day to go in deep in this theoretical, philosophical, and ethical debate.
Of course, it would be very interesting debate, because lies the multiple possibility, and like one can only experience another possibility in order to explore another one, and comes out a different results with that. So I absolutely agree with that. The I guess we're not getting any more questions, but yes, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat box. And yeah, meanwhile, Yannick, we would love to hear your final statement about being here and your overall experience. So, and if you have something to tell to the audience as well.
I will be happy to go in deep with our audience, and we'll be happy to read their real world problem. If we could solve them, if we could help on solving their problem by using certification, by using the norm as a tool of research or innovation, I think this is the good output, and we could go together with that. Will be a pleasure, and thank you for your attention. Thank you for your questions. It was a great honor. Thank you, Gori.
Yeah, it's an
Yeah.
absolutely honor and pleasure for us as well. I am making sure to drop Yannick's LinkedIn in the chat box. So, in
Thank you.
case any of you in future have any questions for him or would like to get any concept solved, definitely feel free to reach out to him, and I'm sure he will be more than happy to help you.
Sure.
So, once again, thank you so much, Yannick, and we absolutely look forward, having you to explain even like this vast concepts, and like we're getting comments, and so it would be already like more than a pleasure to invite you again for one of these sessions. And to everyone who joined today, I have a couple of more announcements to make. So yes, like let me just if you would like to opt certificate for today's session, like you're getting a chance to get it from the website, and we're giving 20% offer. I'm sharing the link along with the code in the chat box, so don't miss out on this offer. And I would also like to introduce you to the utility tool where you can take your career to the next level. It helps you straighten your professional presence, validate what you know, and open doors to the global opportunities. And this is absolutely free for all the participants who have joined today. All you have to do is use the code AUG100 and get your professional level started to the next level to help you explore the global opportunities. And tomorrow we have Chris Ambler, consultant, advisor, mentor, and coach, who will be giving a session on managing AI change without chaos, ISO 42001 in action, 8 p.m. IST, 10:30 p.m. SGT, January 8th. And this is the lineup for the leadership works for skill and learning impact for 2026, happening from January 5th to January 31st, 9:30 a.m. CST, 11:30 p.m. SGT, and 9 p.m. IST. And another side by side, we're also having GSDC AI in action, which is also going from the 5th January to 31st January, 7:30 a.m. CST, 9:30 p.m. SGT, and 7 p.m. IST. So if you're interested to grab your spot in AI as well, it would be amazing if you could join these sessions too. And a special thanks to all the referral champions, Astik Saxena, Rakesh Ranjan, and Bandi Hemant. You guys have been helping us. And if you would also like to increase your professional visibility, all you have to do is visit gsdccouncil.org and be a part of the leaderboard, where you can invite your colleagues, your working professional for this webinar. And as you climb up the leaderboard and make it up to the top 3, then you will be receiving vouchers worth $400. And if you would like to be a part of any of our learning capsule, webinar, or podcast, you can reach out to me on gauri@gsccouncil.org, or pratibha@gsccouncil.org, or preetham@gsccouncil.org, and we will be more than happy to assist you and get you on board. Lastly, we would love to connect with you. So if you could follow us on LinkedIn, you can visit our website for more details, join the exclusive WhatsApp group where you get daily updates about the different sessions happening. And if you could share your takeaways on reviews.io, what you learned from today's session, that would definitely mean a lot to us. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm sharing all the details in the chat box about the utility tool and the certification. Also, make sure that you're connecting with Yannick Buddy so that you can always reach out to him in future. Have a good night and good day. Bye.